Today is Wednesday, November 20th, 2024, and this is the Hendrick Hudson Central School District Board of Education meeting. Can I have a motion to open the meeting?
Motion to open.
Can I have a second? All in favor? The Hendrick Hudson School District Board of Education will convene for the purpose of collective negotiations under the Taylor Law, medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment or promotion or demotion or discipline or suspension or removal of a particular person or corporation. So we will move into exec. Can I have a motion to move into executive session?
Motion to move into executive session.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? The Hendrick Hudson Board of Education will return at approximately 7 p.m.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Hendrick Hudson School District Board meeting. Can we please rise with the pledge of allegiance? We're going to start our night with our student recognition. I'm going to turn the mic over to Mr. Conlon.
President Mills. So this evening, we have the privilege of recognizing Paige Montgomery, who is tennis captain, a lacrosse captain, and we'll go into some of the specific details of what made her such a great representative of Hendrick Hudson for the Con Ed Scholar Athlete Award, Athlete of the Week. But I'll turn it over to our athletic director, Mr. Tom Baker, for those details.
Thank you, and thanks for having us here tonight. It's my pleasure tonight to be able to present Paige Montgomery, and Paige truly embodies what it means to be a student athlete. She is, as Mr. Tromba just said, an extremely successful athlete, whether you see her on the tennis courts or on the lacrosse field. But what makes Paige extra special is that she's just as successful in the classroom, and she's successful in all of her extracurricular activities, community service. She truly represents our district in a wonderful way. You can find her at many times working with our adaptive tennis group kids, our sailor kids, our unified teams. She's just willing to help, and she's truly blossomed into a wonderful leader for our district and for our community. And when Coach Fredman and I were discussing putting up student athletes for Con Ed, Paige's name was the one that rose right to the top of the list in the fall. And this award is becoming more and more competitive to get, and Paige was lucky enough to win this in October. And I'm going to present her in a minute, but I was also given this last week, and I'm going to be able to give Paige, Westchester County Legislator provided Paige with a proclamation for her efforts. And reading the proclamation, it's not only encumbers her athletic abilities, but also her work in the classroom and off the field as well for all of her leadership activities. So at this time, I'd like to bring up our Con Ed Award winner and multi-sport athlete, Paige Montgomery.
Just wanted to say a quick thing. I'm so unbelievably honored and excited to have won this award. It just is an amazing feeling when hard work pays off. And I just wanted to say thank you for all your support.
Her parents are here with us tonight, and you find them at all of our games, along with our coach, Mr. Fredman, as well. And he was probably, you might have been more excited than Paige when we found out she won. But I want to thank the Board of Education, Mr. Trombley, and all of our administrators for your support of our athletic program and giving kids an opportunity like Paige to be successful like this. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And also thank you for recognizing the attributes that Paige has brought to not only the field but also the classroom as well, because that term scholar athlete truly embodies who Paige is. So
yes, it is.
I want to thank that. And I had some free time on my hands over the past couple of days. I was able to listen to the podcast, the radio announcement on WHTV. So I think, Paige, if you don't find success in the leadership role or academics or on the athletic field, you definitely have a career budding in perhaps podcast or media. Your poise in the radio broadcast came through, and I was really proud to have you represent Hendrick Hudson. But just a few other notes that I learned about Paige is that she was part of a team who was the undefeated league championship for the first time since 2007 in tennis. And we know that Con Ed since 1951 has handed out more than $1 million in scholarship. Paige engages in service learning with our elementary schools. I don't know if education is on the forefront for you as a
Definitely is,
possible role.
yes.
Thank you for helping out some of our littlest hen-hut sailors and learners. Paige is also a founder and instructor of something that's close to, I know, Mr. Baker and Coach Friedman's heart on the adaptive tennis program that we have here. And I will say that, Paige, the way that you recognize your teammates for your success shows that you are a true leader worthy of this designation. So thank you very much. Congratulations. So, as always, you're more than welcome to stay, or you can head home and... Sure. Paige, we're going to
Thank you again for having us.
Can we get a picture first?
Picture for your picture.
Coach, come on. Who say?
Why don't you guys come up here? Yeah, I'm in front of the bunny here. Yeah. You want to get in there, parents?
Yes.
Go ahead.
You got a holiday.
Everybody gets one here.
You got a holiday.
Here, do you want to come next to me? Yeah, go. Here you go. You guys can.
You want to switch down?
Mike, move over.
Yes, sir.
Great.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Great, that brings us to the approval of our agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as stated? Motion to approve agenda as stated. Second. All in favor? Now we are at the portion where we are hearing comments on non-agenda items from the public. There's no one signed up? No. Now we're at the portion where I ask anyone if they would like to pull anything from the consent agenda.
I do. 5.4, the risk assessment.
So you'd like to make a motion to remove,
I would like to make a motion to remove fiscal 5.4 approval of corrective action plan 23-24 annual risk assessment.
from the consent agenda?
Yes. That's the only one I need for, right?
Yeah.
Just the approval of the corrective action.
Does anyone second that motion? Second. All in favor? Now we will approve the consent agenda without fiscal 5.4. Motion. Anyone second? All in favor? Now we can discuss the items removed from the consent agenda. So we can discuss fiscal 5.4. Corrective action plan 23-24 annual risk assessment.
So every. You guys chime in. So every year there's an audit that's done by an outside audit agency, and they help us with any areas that have been identified as needing some sort of a corrective action plan. It is a requirement by New York State. This document is our acknowledgement of the deficiencies as well as the written explanation to be submitted to New York State, acknowledging the areas that we have accepted as being in need of a adjustment and the associated steps that we intend to take to close that gap. What are those gaps? Jill, is there anything that I left off of that?
No, I don't believe so. No, I don't believe so. I mean, so you said risk assessment. This is actually the audit report after the risk assessment, which was the payroll audit report. Itself, the observations and then the corrective action for that.
Thanks.
This is something that all districts in the state of New York have to engage in as part of internal safety controls and protective measures to inform the board in part of their fiduciary responsibility, but also to provide the district with opportunities to improve its operations.
So do I make the motion or?
Yeah, anyone?
So I'll make a motion to accept.
5.4, yep. Second, on favor? Okay, now we move to, hearing on agenda items. No one signed up. Okay, we move on to our presentation and discussion.
We have two presentations this evening. The first will be on our, update on our restructuring costs. So one of my first board meetings that I had with you last year was that we were involved in some lengthy discussions on the restructuring of our elementary schools. And one of the components that the board was asking for, and many of our community members, if you have gone back and watched those videos or if it's just fresh in your mind, was that to help make that decision, what are cost considerations that need to be explored to help make an informed decision. At that time, I was very hesitant to provide specific cost consideration because I felt it was risky to do so because we didn't know what we didn't know. But also balancing that with the fact that we know that this was a decision that the board was taking seriously and the community was taking seriously. And that was a component that needed to be explored. So we did provide projections to the best of our knowledge, with the caveat that they are only projections and we ask for flexibility if those change. But at the same time, I made a commitment that we would come back in November when we knew most of the costs associated with the move and the actual physical restructuring, so that the board of the community could have an understanding of what those costs were. So that's the purpose of tonight's presentation. Jill Figuerella, our interim assistant superintendent for business, who is not here during those discussions, so has I'm sure learned a lot as part of this exercise in the presentation. Will be leading us through those restructuring costs. I will say that at this point, it's not an analysis of the actual configuration of the elementary school to see if it's benefiting our children better or if it's because we're 2 months in, 3 months into it. And I think if we were to do that, we'd also want to identify with the community and the board, what do we value out of what we're looking to measure and how do we measure that so that we can then report accurately on that to you to help provide an overall assessment. So this time I'll turn it over to Jill for the presentation.
Good evening, Jill Figuerella, school business official for Andrew Cutzing. So I prepared this presentation. It's a brief presentation of where we are at this point. We're 52 days into the school year, and it's our implementation policy, 5110 attendance zone. It's we moved away from the Princeton plan and moved to this new plan. And it was, there was a series of plans that were looked at last year. So rewind to December 6th and how we changed from our previous grade banding, new configuration, the Board of Education. I'm sorry, this is further away than I thought it was.
Yeah, that's why you gave that copy.
So the Board of Education had a public hearing. They had thoughtful discussions. They looked at affordable changes. Flushing out the facts, what were the best educational models, also the room capacities, staffing that we had, or what we would need, opportunities that it would present, and several plans were presented at that time. I believe there was Plan A through G. So what do we know? You can move it forward. What do we know so far about these costs this year? beginning with July 1st till now, we had 52 teachers who got paid to recognize the fact that they had to reorganize their classrooms, moving from one building to another. We paid out some an amount to them, I believe it was $40 an hour, over that period of time. It was about $25,000. There were some technology costs involved for overtime and for flat panel installations. The overtime was about $6,000, and the moving of the flat panels and adjustments for other flat panels in the building had to be made, in the buildings had to be made, and that ran about $14,000. We had a mover, an outside moving company, come in and move all of the things within those three facilities to where they needed to be. And I believe at that time, we had an estimate of about $212,000. It ended up being about $210,000. There were staffing changes in each of the buildings. I know we had some questions about that. I looked at it from a different perspective, then later found out that those FTEs that we added were definitely going to be needed, not because of the restructuring and not because of the moving from the model we had before to the new model. So originally we put this out and I wanted to make it clear that we had definitely added those positions, except that they would have been added anyway. So we have an ENL teaching position, a kindergarten special ed position, and 2 teaching assistants. So that's what that's representing. But again, we felt that that was a needed thing and not definitely related to the restructuring. So fast forward, we're going to talk about students and staff, where we were then and where we are now. 23-24, we had 919 students we were serving, and now there are 911 as of October, when we had to file our beds forms. Buchanan per Plank went from 243 students. Those are projected. So that's what was projected at the meeting on December 6th in 2023, that there would be 243 students in per Plank, Buchanan per Plank School, and there's actually 224. So we were 19 less than we thought we were going to be. Furnace Woods was projected at 201. And ended up with 215, which was plus 14 students. And the projected for Frank G. Lindsay was 475, and we ended up with 472. I think there's a delta of 8 students there, and I think that's pretty close to what we thought it was going to be. The teachers did increase by 2 district-wide, which we just spoke about due to the need of the students that we have. So Buchanan per Plank stayed at 27, Furnace Woods went up by 1, from 23 to 24, and FGL, went up from 48 to 49. Moving on to the cost for transportation, I can say I did look at the cost from, July 1st, 2023 through November 20th, today, of 2023. To see what the costs were compared to this year, July 1st, 2024 through November 20th, 2024, we are within $20,000. So the costs last year and this year are very similar. I can't say that the bills and everything else are exactly the same as what we paid from them to them, but I took a quick look at it and I know that we're within $20,000 at this point. I mean, bills come in consistently, they don't come in, there's things I'm sure that are missing we can't really tell that until the end of the school year, right? So I just wanted to mention that because I thought it was important. So in 2023-24, we ran 25 buses. For the elementary school this year is 23. The number of large buses that we run district-wide is 23. And the vans are 17, and there are 6 spare buses in the district at the moment. The number of miles traveled per day in 23-24 was 729 miles per day, and in 24-25, 552. Sounds like a lot of difference between that. It's 177 miles per day. Multiply that by 180 days in the school year. Divide that by 10. We're talking about $2.40 a gallon, about $7,600. So the difference in the cost is we're actually spending less on fuel based on that information. So about $8,000 over the entire school year. Our transportation aid, I was asked to give that information as well. The aid really, this is a difficult data point to look at because your 23-24 aid, which is the number that I have up there, the 1.1 million, that's based on the expense, what we spent in the prior year. So not really looking at apples to apples when we look at things like that right now, because our 24-25 aid is based on last year's expense. So I don't have enough information to give you that would, an aid that would make sense right now. I don't have the final, aid audited, the final expenses audited for last year yet. I don't know what the final aid ratio is going to be. Right now, we're getting 41% of what, not our entire, what we spend entirely on transportation, but the aidable expenses in transportation. So it all depends on what you spend your money on, how much, what the percent is on that number. So if we spend $3 million in transportation, that doesn't mean we're getting 41% of $3 million back. It could mean that we're getting 41% of $1.5 million back or $2 million back, depends on what we spend it on. So I'm giving an estimate there for the 24-25, what I think we're gonna get this year. And then what we're gonna get next year is gonna be based on what we spent this year. So that's difficult to give you at this point in time. That's the entire presentation based on the actual numbers for expenses. I don't know if you have any questions on that part of it. Things related to that.
Thank you, Jill. We'll have you come back.
Sure.
Table, so if you have some questions, go and just stand up. But thank you for the presentation, and now we'll open up to board member questions.
I have a quick question. What data points that we use to figure out that the additional $331,000?
So the year before, we were only getting 32, sorry. The year before, we were only getting 32.2% in transportation aid, and now our transportation aid ratio has increased by 40 to 41%. So it's up 10% from the year before.
What about the DFTs?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the difference in the
The
aid.
staff and the 331,000. I guess I'm trying to understand what data points we use to figure out that that wasn't for restructuring, that it was the student need.
Okay, so those questions I can answer.
So we have the ENLs, the number of ENL students. There was an increase in need due to the number of ENL students and the levels that would have been needed, whether or not we stayed in the previous model or moved to the current model. There's a number of those types of expenses in school districts. We have every year there's costs between years. Utilities can fluctuating, student needs can fluctuate, enrollment can fluctuate, transportation costs, particularly this year, our aid ratios with foundation aid being in question. That could be a different consideration as well. So ENL is one of those. It doesn't necessarily mean it's not directly correlated to number of students. It could also be the number of service level that we provide. If you're an emerging student, you may receive more service time than if you are a student of a higher proficiency level.
I just wanted a little bit of clarity on that because I'm new to all of these numbers, so forgive me for asking too many questions, but your words when you were just presenting this were you saw it differently, and then this new version of the deck came out and this stuff was crossed out. So
Sure.
but I guess we're just wondering what changed from like the first version to this that made you reclassify the way this $331,000.
Sure. So we put together a presentation in advance of the board meeting, and we, the district, want to make sure that it's presented to the public and the board before the board meeting occurs. We do not have a chance as a cabinet to meet until the following Monday, in which we review any questions that come in from the board over the weekend. And we also review the presentations that we are going to be giving to the board and the community on that Wednesday. And when we sat down as a cabinet, that's an opportunity for all of our presentations to go through for accuracy, to make sure that we're clearly aligning the presentation to what the tasks of the presentation was. And that was an opportunity where our cabinet was able to sit down and say, let's review these numbers. Are they accurate and are they related directly to the reconfiguration itself? And in this particular case, we deemed that they were not specifically, if it stayed in the model last year, we would have had to do that.
But the second teacher that's listed there, is that accurate? Because that says K to 2, yeah, FGL. Is that supposed to be a different school?
It's probably going to be needed. I mean, it's probably supposed to be Furnace Woods, and Lisa's not here to answer this.
But didn't we have to hire a teacher for that one because of the, like, this, then there was that question that did, like, that was more recent hire.
That's for the 12, that was for the 12-1 too.
No, there was one for the ICT class in first grade possibly
At Furnace Woods.
at Furnace Woods.
You can double check this.
We also needed, she also brought in an extra ABC class there this year. She added an K2 ABC class based on her presentation.
Right, so I specifically asked our special ed director, you know, did we split the 12-1-2 class because of the restructuring? And she said, we did not add the teachers, that teacher was already in the budget. We added an ABC class due to the needs of the students incoming to kindergarten. So,
There was the question though earlier. I don't remember now if it was the end of last year, beginning of this year, when we had the section of Furnace Woods. The ICT, it was the end of last, ICT, yeah. And then it ended up being instead of one student, I think 3, so then we had to hire someone. So I just wasn't sure if that was
I believe it was,
represented in
it
here.
was part of the grant already, and it was used from the grant. But I will double check.
I just have one other question, before we move on. I fully understand the whole, aid, you know, the difficulty of
projecting that, yeah.
Yeah, but the way it works in general, and going from one plan to the other where the mileage is significantly less, shouldn't we expect to have a decrease in aid in the future?
Well, the mileage is only costing in gas, you know, it's costing us $8,000. It's not gonna be a change in aid because of that, no.
Right, but isn't it based on the proximity of kids within a 1.5 mile radius? Isn't that what the aid is? I mean, I know this.
Right, there's 19,000 miles
asking
within the
if you're using that.
1.5. I believe there's like, the mileage doesn't change it, the mileage changes per day, but that mileage isn't going to make a significant change in the aid.
The mileage from when we were in Princeton plan to where we are now is not gonna see.
No, it's not gonna be significant. It sounds like a big difference to have that many per day, but it's not gonna make a big difference.
Okay.
That's not going to, it's more or less the expenditures within the department overall. So,
That will.
yeah, and besides the aid ratio, we
Meaning that
get
those will stay
going
the
from
same.
32 to 41%, that aid is gonna go up. It's not gonna go down. Our aid ratio went up. Are the formulas, you know, may have changed somewhat, maybe some of the data points that were put into those formulas were reconfigured, because I looked at our aid that was available to us last year, and it was at a different aid ratio by a full 10%. That's a huge difference.
And in transparency, the aid ratio would have gone up whether we stayed in the previous models.
Right.
And we don't know what it's gonna be.
I just want to make sure that we just know that the 22, 23, 24 that's shown, that's really for the year of 22, 23.
Correct.
Right, and 24, 25.
Yeah, that's the aid we get in that year for the previous
Okay.
year.
I
That's
just want to make sure that's clarified.
Yeah,
Because
that's
right
why
now
I-
it's reading as if it's for this year.
No, that's why I made a note there. Transportation aid is relative to aidable expenses incurred in the prior year.
So I guess in summary, did you guys find that, what was the overall savings if we had to compare the two? Or we didn't do an analysis of that, right?
I'm sorry, say the beginning again?
what was this, was there any substantial savings that we found?
No, not really. Just the gas expenditures at this point. So there were expenditures as a result of the restructuring, and that was in the chart. But not yet. We don't see those savings or additional expenses, and we won't until the end of the, the school year when we know more of the total expense for the year.
But one of the things we're gonna have to carry forward now when we're in budget season is also the 331 additional dollars that we didn't originally have when we were going back and.
For the staffing you're talking about? Yeah, and there could be other changes in staffing as well.
I'm sorry, no, I was just gonna say, I guess one of the things that I would like to see us do is just like a recap, right, where we kind of go back, not now, obviously, but eventually that we need to do as a district. I feel personally, is just to do a recap of dollars and cents of what it was, what it is, if this is good to have, but we don't have like,
Sure.
the original was just the move cost, that's all we were supposed to have, but then there's all these other layers of things. And then I really wanna see what staff feedback is, I wanna see what student feedback, like how is everybody reacting to the new plan that we've done, but more substantially, I think that we need to also see like what the class sizes look like, so people understand, what we came from and what we have now, and how we as a district are gonna work going forward to ensure that all of our students are getting all the needs and the things that they want.
Working through the budget season coming up, we'll be going over all of those things, all those data points in all the departments, not just for the restructuring, but throughout the entire budget. I mean, for all enrollment, for all, expenses, we'll be looking at the delta between last year, this year, what we need those dollars for.
So we'll begin to be sharing the 2021, the 2023, 2024 actual expenditures, 2024, 2025 projected or budgeted expenditures. And then as we move through the budget season, we'll give you the year to date. And as we get even closer, we can give you the projected expenses for the end of the year. And we'll try to do our best to delineate where some of the restructuring related costs would be in there.
Right, because some of those costs obviously are not going to be reoccurring, like, the teacher expense, the technology expense, and the moving costs. But the teaching, obviously the staffing is going to be affected, but I think it's going to be affected in other ways when we do our budget as well. This is not the only thing that's going to be, part of that, those increases.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, we can move on to our next presentation, which is on the MTSF and AIS presentation. We're turning it over to Dr. Butler. Do you want to mention?
Yes. So first of all, we're taking the feedback on both of these presentations as we try to refine the presentation to allow you to have a thoughtful discussion and continue to remain rest. One of those items that we had thoughtful discussion on and wanted to revisit was our last month's supportive education presentation on our MTSS process, AIS process, those supports for our students. We did have some follow-up questions that we wanted to revisit, and I appreciate Dr. Ruller. We will now be leading that presentation on some specific follow-up items that came from there, but also another opportunity to ask questions. And we are in that time of year where we have made implementations of AIS instructional programs based upon some of the data that was shared. So I'll turn over to Dr. Ruller.
Hey, everybody. Just a fair warning, lots of acronyms will be coming your way. So if there's something you want explained and I skip over it, please stop me. So we'll start and follow this down from the state level to what actually happens in the district. So that chart, which is really tiny, is really what comes from the state. So MTSS means multi-tiered system of supports. It is intended to provide instructional or behavioral support or extension to students by providing additional instruction based on individual weaknesses, skill deficits, or demonstrated advanced learning in specific content areas. That's a mouthful. In remediation mode, each tier of the model, and there are three, tier one, which is classroom instruction, tier two, which can be classroom instruction, but in this district it is not, and tier three are really designed with smaller group sizes or increased instructional time. So there's a change in the modality that delineates as you move through the system. The focus is on targeted intervention directed to the needs of the individual student rather than on broad-based instruction. And we do a lot of testing to understand what the deficit skill is and then to match it with an intervention strategy. MTSS aims to identify at-risk students in order to remediate those deficits and avoid special education. It is not a pathway to CSE. It is rather designed to be a pathway to avoid that. For advanced learners in specific content, MTSS aims to provide learning opportunities through regrouping on or above grade level. So that is the language that comes to districts from the state. On the next slide, we get a little bit more funnel to how the district looks at MTSS internally. And I will preface this by saying that we have been in the process of rolling out MTSS for more years than I care to mention. We've done training and PowerPoints for the principals to share with staff. We've created forms for teachers to follow the tier process. We've done models of the MTSS building level meetings. It has been hard to remain faithful to those objectives over the years. I think in the past 2 years, we've seen a tightening with everyone coming closer together. And certainly in this past May, in this very building, there was a 3-day extensive training for all of the building level teams. And I think that went a long way in helping us hit the reset button. So this year, I have had the privilege of attending several meetings at different schools. I haven't been yet able to attend one in each building, but I am seeing more fidelity to the goals that we set together as a district. I see process that is more faithful to what we laid out in this building in May. So I'm very pleased with that. So students are brought to an MTSS meeting for concerns that may be based on academic performance, behavioral needs, and or attendance. Services provided should a student be referred for Tier 2 support may include AIS reading or math, SEL support, social emotional learning, and or health-related support. Okay. At the meeting now, we've gotten a little bit narrower, and now we're sitting in a room at BV in the actual meeting. And teachers are required to bring data from their classroom work that has been intended to address the deficit in question. So the teacher refers the student, and we ask that the teacher come with evidence of the struggle, but also evidence of what he or she has done in the classroom to try to remediate that struggle that he or she feels has been unsuccessful. The students' branching minds and infinite campus records are reviewed by the MTSS building team for prior performance and or supports provided. So we look to see, has this student struggled in a previous grade or previous building? Have they been referred to MTSS, and what then was the result of that referral? All of that is information that's important to the team that's making the decision in that moment. The MTSS team may choose to provide additional strategies to the teacher of record, sending that teacher back to the classroom to try again, or may determine that sufficient attempts to address the concern have failed by the teacher alone, and it is now time to refer. We're still in the meeting. There is a referral to Tier 2, and the interventionist, whoever that person is, does a screening with their own tools in their own area of specialty to determine the appropriate intervention based on those results. We'll talk a little bit about those tools on a later slide. Parents are notified of the MTSS team results. That notification would tell a parent that that child is being referred to, I'll say, AIS reading. Based on local benchmarking, they may mention the name of the teacher, and that's the beginning of the process. Scheduling for services begins, sometimes at the secondary level. There's a little bit of a trick with scheduling that may delay for a short period of time. And then scheduling depends on tier placement, obviously. I'll talk about that later on as well. A check back with the MTSS team should be scheduled in that very meeting where the student is referred. And that's the purpose of the MTSS team checking in on the Tier 2 interventionists now and seeing how things are going. So that recheck of every set of hands, if you will, or every teacher that touches that student in terms of intervention should be built into the MTSS process. Any changes to the student status must come through a reconvened MTSS meeting, and parents must be notified of that change. So let's say that your child is assigned to tier 2 intervention. And after 4 weeks, 6 weeks of intervention, we're finding that, well, maybe it's time for tier 3. The parent should be notified that that student has moved from tier 2 to tier 3. That may be a different service provider. It will also likely be a different frequency, group size, or duration. If a child is referred from tier 3, the next conversation is usually a CSE referral. Again, the parent would be notified of that. If a child is exited, tier 2 worked, yay, and we can send Johnny back to his homeroom teacher, the parent should be notified that services are being discontinued because the student has returned to grade level performance in whatever area of deficit was discovered. Okay, more New York State stuff. Provide support in any academic area that ends in a New York State assessment. We know that that is ELA, math, science, social studies. Supplement, not supplant. We've had a lot of conversations about that this year. The increased instruction that occurs in an interventionist classroom must be in addition to whatever the classroom teacher provides, not instead of. So at the elementary level, I fully expect that our students are seeing small group reading with their classroom teacher and then getting an additional small group reading experience with an interventionist. We rely on multiple measures for entry and exit. Sometimes that's the hardest thing to understand. New York State, years ago, it's worth mentioning that the academic intervention guidelines from New York State were last written in the year 2000, just a short period of time ago. And actually before the invention of the 3 through 8 testing, because that didn't come into play till 2001. So a long time ago, the guidance from the state was if a student had a level 1 or a level 2 in the New York State ELA or math test, they would automatically qualify for AIS. A few years back, New York State realized the error of that way because on testing day, I might not feel so great and I might bomb that test. I might just not be in the mood to take the test. So New York State came out with an additional set of guidelines that leans on the multiple measures. Every beginning of October, we get a letter from the state that tells us what are the scale score cutoffs for the 3 through 8 testing. They give us a number and they tell us, okay, local education agency, your job now is to look at that scale score. And if your student falls below that cutoff, now you look at all of the other local tools that you use for assessment. So in this district, and we'll look at them more closely on a few pages, we look at things like iReady, or we look at Ames Web, and we look at what the teacher is telling us, what the grade performance in the classroom is, and we then say, is this child a child who needs help, or did this child have a bad testing day? Because we don't want to overservice a child who maybe just that day didn't do as well as we had hoped, but they're holding their own day-to-day in the classroom. And then the last thing that we've already discussed is that we are required by those guidelines to provide differentiation of frequency, duration, group size as it relates to the level of intensity. There is a board policy for academic intervention services, number 4325. Generally states that we provide parental notification as the service commences and as it ends, and then to describe the description of services, tier 2 versus tier 3, and the criteria for entry or exit. Okay? Let's talk entry criteria. So again, remember we said multiple measures, and you'll see these on a chart at the end of the presentation. In ELA, we most often rely on iReady performance, a running record, which is a teacher and a child sitting side by side as they read unknown text. The New York State testing program scale score, if you're in a testing grade, so you would automatically know that kids K-3 don't have that marker. And then of course, teacher recommendation. On the math side of the house, we look at iReady, we look at grade level curriculum benchmarking. So in our math programs, we use those benchmark assessments that came with the program to be one of those data points. Again, we look at the New York State testing program scale score, and again, we look to teacher recommendation. And then on the next slide, what I'm showing you here is, and you'll notice it says fall. So we have different criteria for fall, winter, and spring, because as you might imagine, the expectations change as we move through the school year. So this is a sample of the K-5 ELA entry criteria. And you'll look down, you'll see the grade levels, tier 2 in iReady, we use the same markers. And by the way, the points that are here come from the tools that we use. So the recommendations in the programs, tier 2 for iReady is between the 16th and the 30th percentile, and tier 3, a more intensive service, is 0 to 15. And then you'll look to the right of that and you'll see the running record tier cutoffs for tier 2 and tier 3. Those letters are referring to instructional levels for students in their reading program. And then you can see at the bottom right, all the way at the bottom for grades 4 and 5, those are the New York State scale score cutoffs that were provided to us the first week of October this year. With a similar chart, we'd look for math, except you'd see probably Ames Web instead of the running for math. Oh, it's on the next chart. So look at the next chart is K-5 math. iReady, again, same thing, 0 to 15 is tier 3, 16 to 30 is tier 2. We use the same set of criteria for the benchmark that comes with the Eureka squared. And then down at the bottom, you see the New York State testing program scale score cutoffs. When we move to middle school, this is middle school ELA on the next slide, they are still using running record levels. 6, 7, and 8, and you can see fall, winter, spring on this chart, tier 2 and tier 3 cutoffs. And then iReady and Ames Web Plus is the second set of data points. Again, the same percentiles as we used in elementary. And then the classroom performance grade, there's nothing there because it's a conversation. So it may be that someone's grades in class are high, but the teacher feels strongly that support is needed, and the other markers show that to be potentially a situation, and it may be the reverse, where a child just doesn't do well in a testing environment, but is performing well day to day in class. So the middle school chose not to put anything there, but to leave that open for conversation in the MTSS meeting. And because all 3 grade levels there are testing students, they have the scale score cutoffs all the way on the right for each grade. And the next page is middle school math. They don't look too dissimilar. Obviously no running record information, but iReady and Ames Web again with the same set of percentiles. Again, classroom grades and performance is up for conversation. And then you can see all the way on the right, the math at the middle school adds key math as another data point for their teachers. High school is a whole different ballgame. I did not include them here. There are many things that they look at high school, classroom performance, all kinds of testing. I would say that that team has come a long way in making decisions about students and making sure that they include all of the SEL information available to them as they make determinations for the next placement for their kids. So, questions?
So before we open it up to questions, Dr. Weller, you had some work with our building principals and our MTSS teams that's relevant to what's just been presented over the past week. Could you provide an update on some of those conversations that come out about
We can talk about fall benchmarking. So we finished the fall benchmarking October 23rd. All of the tests were to be handed in or collected, and then we make charts to look at the cutoffs. So a part of this process is black and white percentiles. We look at the percentiles, we determine which students are tier 2, tier 3, in all of the multiple measures, and then I have a meeting with the building principals because that part that is teacher recommendation is really critical. So we may identify children who are tier 3 and tier 2 in black and white, and they're in, we're good to go, we're ready to take those kids on board. There's always the kid who meets one marker and not another. And so it's important for us to hear from the teachers, from the interventionists, if there are kids that, they may have serviced, and from the building principal. Invariably, we take additional kids into the program based on those conversations. And so we have finished that round of conversation at elementary. And I am very happy to say that we landed in a very comfortable place in terms of teacher schedules. And for the first time in a long time, we have room in our teacher schedules at elementary in both ELA and math to go up one level and take the kids who are above the cutoff point. So in math and ELA, in the percentiles for iReady, instead of cutting at 30, we went to 40. And in on the reading side of the house, we went up in the F&P level. So tomorrow, I am meeting with Cindy and Jim and Josh. The reading teachers have provided us with their schedules based on the students we knew we were taking, the black and white cut kids. Now we're going back in and we're adding opportunities to take what we're calling the approaching students. So we have lists of kids who are next to get some service. It won't look the same as it does in tier 2 or tier 3. This is probably going to be a push-in model with the interventionist working alongside the classroom teacher with the students identified in that class who need a little bit of extra help. But we are excited about the opportunity to grab a few more kids that may be on the cusp of needing help, but would not have made the initial straight number cut.
Thank you, Dr. Rowell. And also, just to clarify, there may be some confusion if we go back to the tier levels. Sometimes we say that a student is being removed from AIS tier 3, but that they may be moving to AIS tier 2, still receiving those services, but just looking a little different, correct?
Yeah, thank you. I actually, we just had this conversation. The exit letter for tier 3, and I'm thinking in particular of the middle schools, can be very misleading because it says your child is being removed from reading services, but that's not true. The tier 3 service in middle school is with the reading interventionist. The tier 2 service at the middle school is with the child's homeroom teacher. Still, you know, it's a separate pullout, but it isn't the same, and it doesn't have to be, as the elementary building. So if you're an elementary parent and you're used to that language and that service, usually being with maybe even the same reading teacher, but just a different level of intensity, that letter that exits a child from tier 3 to tier 2 is very confusing. So I actually have asked Anthony and Anicia to amend that letter so it's clearer to parents that the child's not being pulled out of reading, but rather moved to reading service with their homeroom teacher.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll open it up to the Board of Ed for questions. Go ahead.
Margaret, thank you for the presentation. And as I was listening to your presentation, I don't know about anyone else, but I was extremely overwhelmed in trying to follow the information because I'm not a reading teacher, nor am I a special education teacher. And one of the things that is very confusing is what services are in what tier. So if I'm in tier 3, what services am I getting as a parent? If I'm in tier 2, what services? I'm looking at your slide 5, and it says parents are notified of the MTSS teen results. So here's another confusing part to parents who are not specialized in this. And I don't know if other people know, when you get that letter and it says you're a U or you're a B, what does that mean? Does that mean my child's average?
Does the letter say that?
When you say your child, if you ask if your child, actually the letter just says they're exited from services.
That's right.
So
Can I tell you why? Because instructional reading levels are not intended for anybody except a teacher. It's just a measure the teacher uses to determine which material they'll pull. It really doesn't mean anything to parents.
So when you notify parents that their child is referred to the MTSS,
Sure.
you just get a notification. You just tell them they're being referred. You don't tell them why.
So the letter should say, for argument's sake, that was the top of my head, that, you know, Margaret is being referred for reading services because they did not meet the benchmarks in iReady, the F&P running record, the New York State test.
Okay, so now they're in tier, let's say they're in tier 2.
Sure.
No one, and the district website doesn't even say it. Tier 2 provides reading comprehension support, or
We can't, so we, the reading services, let's stick with reading. So the reading services that are provided by an interventionist in either tier 2 or tier 3 are tailored to that student. It's not a program, it's not, I mean, it can be a program, so I'll give you an example. In tier 3, we have a lot of people who use Wilson or Orton Gillingham or preventing academic failure. That's a program geared to a specific need that I've identified in my assessment of the student I'm taking in. But in tier 2, those programs are pretty intensive. In tier 2, that might not be the case. I might just be doing reading comprehension work with the child. I might be doing decoding work with the child. I might be enhancing vocabulary. Those aren't programs, they're strategies.
now I'm taken aback because I was under the assumption that tier 2 was for comprehension.
No, tier 2 can be for anything you need. I got a whole lot of kids in tier 2 that need decoding. You know, that's what I'm saying. It's such an individualized art because I can have 5 kids with 5 different needs. I can't teach them all the same. That's why the interventionist does their own assessment before they design the intervention they're going to use. And we just had this conversation as well. I remind people when we're pulling children out of classrooms for service, we are not ever servicing the homeroom teacher. So I may have 5 kids that need help. And it may be extremely disruptive to me, but if those 5 kids need 5 different needs, they better not be leaving that room at the same time because you can't deliver that with fidelity, with effectiveness on the interventionist side. So I have to know that you need decoding and you need comprehension, and you're not coming to me at the same time because those are 2 different interventions. I have to group you with the kids who need decoding, and I'll find some, and you with the kids who need comprehension.
It's more tailored for.
Absolutely.
Well, and I'm not sure exactly what goes on here, because I don't work here, but I've done AIS, middle school math AIS. And unfortunately, the way that the schedules run, we don't get to pick the kids during those.
Secondary is hard.
Secondary is a little harder, but I will have those students in the room who have varying needs. So the way that we've done it, and I'm assuming that it's gonna be done similar, we give our benchmark at the beginning. I would see what standards my students have mastered, and we would have our list, and every kid's folder, we would highlight, you've mastered this one, but you didn't. So then when I pull small groups for certain things, you won't get pulled, you'll be able to work on another assignment similar, and I guess that's where the reading level would go. Let's say, go back to reading. If you're comfortably a level E, I'll know to pull books that are E or below for you to read independently. But when you come to work with me, maybe I'll pull F books because that's where you won't know all those words and you're gonna need my support.
Right.
But those other books you can do individually. So while I'm working with another student on a level F or anything, you could be working on things you've already.
Here's the confusion, because I was told the tier 2 was comprehension. And when I said, well, then how are they getting the spelling, the grammar, the punctuation?
I don't
ineffective.
think that tier 2 or tier 3 is any particular,
Service. You're saying
you're
it's
just saying that if you
Like
were based on that check, if you just fall into it for whatever reasons, maybe it's because of comprehension, maybe it's because of this, whatever caused you to go into needing that service, that's the service you're gonna provide. I don't think we could say like it's just comprehension or like it's just you don't know how to multiply. It's you're
Someone just telling this.
Someone is actually saying it, but I do think that on the website, we should be describing what the tiers are. And if I go to slide 11, I went on the website and I downloaded it. Does anyone else find this presentation very difficult to follow? I mean, maybe it's just me because I'm on slide 11 and I'm looking at where we have middle school because I could do the elementary too, but I'm looking at running records.
Yep.
So F&P is subjective, correct?
Somewhat, yes.
So that's why we have multiple measures.
Absolutely.
So since F&P is subjective, we go to iReady. And we already know that some kids are flagged for iReady and we don't use their results. And they're
What do you mean by flag? For rushing? Then they retake it. They're supposed to retake
That's
it
not-
after they rush.
With Mr. Giovanazzi, he said he had a list of kids who were flagged. When you're flagged for rushing iReady, it's usually a pattern with the test. Since it's a computer-based test, just an example, I believe my son was flagged for rushing in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade. So we discounted the test. So now we're looking at, that's the New York State ELA test, right? So we're saying we use the New York State ELA test, which our policy says that we use, correct?
Below the scale score that the state provides.
I have never, ever had a conversation about ELA test scores in reference to AIS. And if someone else has been at this table who's gone through the AIS process, if they could please chime in and tell me if they've had a discussion about ELA test scores as it refers to AIS services in that conversation.
I haven't had this conversation.
We had AIS conversation, but with reading, I'm been more focused on math too, so, I mean.
Do they use state test scores?
Only in state test scores for 3rd through 8th. And it's assuming that they took them. So if you're in a K2 situation, there is no state test score.
Did you have test scores? Did your son or daughter take this state test?
For which?
Math.
There's no state test.
Not here, 3rd grade yet.
But I'm telling you, I've never.
I mean, my other two have, obviously.
But I'm saying that I'm being real with you. I've never had a conversation. I have always and that might be a reason why we have a low participation rate in state test scores. Because I have never, ever had a discussion about what the state test scores mean, how they relate to AIS.
Well, can I tell you that?
That's supposed to be one part.
Right.
So I think if you are level 1 or level 2, so if my son came back with a level 2, that doesn't automatically put him.
Right, so then you would go to iReady, so they're
iReady.
flagged with iReady, so we're not
So
doing that.
there may be.
Can I just say that this conversation you're referring to isn't happening with a parent, it's happening in the MTSS team meeting. So yes, they are looking to see, oh, and by the way, did he also bomb the New York State ELA test as another marker? Because they haven't brought it up to you. That's what I'm saying. All of this criteria happens inside the MTSS meeting.
And this is where I think the disconnect is,
Okay.
because all of this happens behind closed doors. Well, no, I get what you're saying.
To hide anything.
No, I don't think they're trying to hide anything. It's missing information.
So what I hear is there's an opportunity for us. It sounds as if we as a district can do a better job of communicating the outcome of those MTSS meetings. And here's what I'm thinking we can drill down into. We can put together an AIS handbook for parents, which has in there things such as the criteria in general, what happens in the MTSS meeting. We'll standardize our entry and exit templates for the letters. And we can also provide a description of services that are typical in tier 2, tier 3, and tier 1, not by specific program. So for instance, I was a part of a district who used Wilson for every tier 3, and we were finding that we were not moving our students because they didn't need Wilson. What should be occurring is that you should be implementing a research-based strategy for students to address their skill gaps or content gaps, and progress monitoring at the same time. So we want to describe our progress monitoring as well. So it sounds as if we have an opportunity as a district to dive into that and provide something that will help clarify if there is some confusion.
Yeah, I have a comment on that too. So just in general with AIS scores, I do think sometimes it's confusing when you do see like the iReady results or the state test results. And as a parent, you may panic when you see something and not know exactly what it is. Like, for, you know, if it says your child in 7th grade is at like a 5th grade level, but then, you know, if you get more clarification, you can talk to the teacher, find out, like, again, maybe that test doesn't exactly mean that's what, you know, the level they're at. You know, maybe like Margaret said, like, or like you said, if there is something that parents could look at that has a little bit more explanation, because, you know, we check the backpack and the results, and there's so many things, and then we're like panicking because we don't know what it means.
you know, and your child could be doing good in class, but then they're doing bad on these tests. So I think it's like, you know, like Margaret explained things, you know, it's not just the one test score. If you did have more explanation on some of those results and what they did.
But one suggestion might be creating for every content area and grade a rubric, and if you score below a certain point, like, so all of, like, you basically already have this rubric here. Just assign like a 4, 3, 2, 1, you know, like you get a 4 if you scored a certain level. And then if you fall below a certain number of points, this way that it's concrete for parents to see. From there, like, your child would qualify because according to their scoring, and then like,
It makes it more confusing. I think one of the things that I would hope we would do, and Lauren touched on it a little bit, is please, and I think I say this all the time, please talk to your teachers. If you're confused or you're upset, they are your go-to person. If you got the backpack the other day, last night I sent that note out. So if you opened the backpack and you had a meltdown because you saw that your 8th grader, and it says on the first page, is functioning 3 grade levels below, call the classroom teacher and ask, can you give me 5 minutes of your time and explain what this means?
I think also one of the things I just want to say is that I think us putting something out in writing kind of pigeonholes us as opposed to like tailoring it to each child, right? So like we say, your kid takes the test and then they're rushing or they're nervous that day. But in the classroom, they're doing amazing and the teacher's seeing all the good work you're doing there, but the test results don't show it, right? You have to talk to the teachers because they're the ones that are with them most of the days, right? And they see our children in their environment, how they're learning, what needs they might have, like what things they need to work on. So I feel like, I don't know if there's like a template we could put out, right? Because there's like, every child needs something different.
You can do, yeah, but what I think they're saying is it would just be, it would show the range, it would show the range in the categories. Just because, I mean, I'm on the website right now and it isn't entirely clear. I'm gonna go from a completely different perspective of having children that are older, okay? I had none of this down. I had 0 of it. I had no iReady scores. I had no iReady anything. I had a child in AIS for a period of time. They were recommended for it. I got a letter. I had a conversation with the teacher. They thought it was best for my child. I put them in. However many weeks later, I got a letter and said they were exited from it, and I just talked to the teacher. We have, as parents now, so much data, right? So much data. It's honestly, some of it is overwhelming, I think, to a lot of parents, because it is very, people can't, you're an educator.
Yeah, but
You're an
see,
educator.
if you want people to take the state test, you can't just throw it on backpack and not tell anybody anything about the
Yeah,
test.
the state test is one measure.
Yeah, but why would I take it then? Why am I gonna take it if no one's gonna touch it or explain it to me?
Our opt-out rate has gone down over the
Okay,
years.
so I like putting what the tiers are. What I really would like is how do we track students who exit services?
Well, that's something else. The MTSS plan that is on the website, I believe at the end says that if you want the criteria for your particular grade or school, please reach out to your building principal. That's what it says. We just put it there. Now, if you want to talk about what happens afterward, that's not really part of an AIS plan. That's just what buildings do. Because I just let you go and I want to make sure that 3 weeks from now, you're not going to fall off a cliff on me. So I talk to the teacher. There isn't a
Who talks to the teacher?
but interventionist. That's not a plan. It's just good teaching. It's just good collaboration that happens.
But in general terms, a student who exits AIS
Mhm.
could, through the MTSS process, be brought back to the MTSS.
Absolutely. We have a number of kids that go in and out. So we have, again, to go back to what we're doing right now, because we're literally doing it right now. We have kids who could have been in by 2 measures. And yet the teacher, to go back to what Tamika said, the teacher in the meeting said, no, he's fine. He is perfectly fine. He is not a test taker. Why would I put that kid in AIS and torture them and take the seat of someone who could use that?
Or just take them out of their classroom.
Okay.
I mean, sometimes even that.
Conversely, we had kids who didn't make some of the data points, and the classroom teacher was like, please, I know this child needs help. So those are the conversations that we can't put them in black and white.
And we're hoping, the hope would be that as we improve with time, standardize our, MTSS process, that those conversations and the data that's brought there become more valid and become more impactful.
And also become part of that student's record. So we use Branching Minds as the database for students who do see support. So as I said in one of the slides, we do go back and see, was Margaret referred? Oh, she was referred twice, but she didn't get in. Was Margaret referred? Oh, yes. And look at what they did. They did these 3 things and it worked. Or they did these 2 things that didn't work. They have to switch gears. All that history helps the teacher who's next in line to work with them.
So let's say I was in AIS last year and I'm exited this year and I'm failing everything. I'm still not in AIS. Why are we not, to your point that we have so much data, why aren't we tracking the students who exit AIS and if they're failing 2 or more subjects? And if the remediation actually helped.
The teacher who has that student is likely doing that.
But there have only teachers this year.
Yeah, but the teacher has access to that information. I just
So it
spoke
sounds
about.
as if the question is related to progress monitoring.
Yeah, I think that's important too, because if they do good in their AIS, then they get taken out,
Right, they
and they can fall below again. So
Absolutely.
sometimes maybe you have to, those kids who were doing good,
Right, they'll be brought back.
pay more attention to them if they're starting to dip again.
They will be brought back to the system. Another issue
That in our MTSS plan?
that no, because it's logical. If I'm in and I'm out and all of a sudden I'm in trouble again.
But I'm saying you don't start MTSS over.
Yes, you do in that grade. They will refer to the information, but the process is the same. It's new, you're new in 7th grade. Maybe you were in it, let's say you were in 5 and out in 6. And now in 7th grade, you're a little bit wonky and your teacher's concerned. They would go to a meeting and say, I'm not so sure about Margaret, let's pull up the records. And lo and behold, there I am. I had service in 5th grade and not in 6th grade. Something is awry. Maybe it's the material getting harder, could be a million things. So that meeting feels new again, even though they have that history up on the screen.
This is a 16-page, it's very thorough MTSS plan that we have on our district website. And there's a lot of nuance to this. And my concern ever since we started this was the time it takes for us to get the kid recommended into the MTSS process. When do those meetings happen in the buildings? Are they on a schedule?
Yep.
How many can you do in a month in a school?
I will tell you, the high school meets almost every day.
But okay.
In elementary, they meet probably twice a month. And again, if twice, let's say the schedule allows for 4 students to be brought forward. If Cindy sees that she has 12 students, she'll add a meeting.
Okay, I just want to, I think because I think we should check on the timeline of getting these kids because in the beginning of the school year, you're going to have a lot of kids recommended.
In the beginning of the school year.
And probably even
We
right
have
now.
all forward from the year before. So we always have kids in the spring that may not be ready to exit. They get picked up right away in the fall while we're benchmarking. Now, I have to say something here. You all know I'm a classroom teacher. The classroom teacher has to do something. Everybody cannot leave their room to go to an interventionist. So what we're saying to classroom teachers
But that's why this is a good process. That's why this is a good process. It's the timeline of getting them into the services they may or may not need.
And I'll tell you that a lot of teachers are frustrated by it, but hello, you are first instruction. I have an expectation that in your reading groups in your classroom, you are accomplishing something with this student before you raise your hand and say, help.
So what I would like to do, excuse me, is to take our MTSS plan and refine it, because the MTSS plan is the state compliance component of it.
Yeah.
I'd like to take that and make it a little bit more parent friendly, and also look at moving up our timeline for next year as we head into the school year. So listen, AIS schedules don't happen daily across I'd like to explore opportunities to increase or expedite that process. Particularly as I know Margaret has worked a lot with making sure that everybody in each building is standardized across the board on what those MTSS meetings are looking like, what data we are going to, kind of conversations we're going to have. So I think we are at a point where we can look to expedite that process moving forward as well.
I'm just want to clarify anything, before when because you were asking the question, like, why should I like take the state test? Then why wouldn't I just opt out? I just wanted to clarify for those at home, it's not opting out, it's a refusal. And you can get like a 1, 2, 3, or 4 on the test if you take it. But if you refuse to take the test, you opt out, right? That's the word we would use, but it's called a refusal. That gets factored into our school score as a 0, not a 1, 2, 3, or 4. So if you don't take it, it's a 0, but if you take it, even if you click, you're at least getting a 1. So if you refuse to take it, that's just one less data point they have, and it negatively affects the school rating and score. I just wanted to put that out for the community at home.
And you know what, I'm glad that you put that out, but when a kid is sitting through that lengthy test, I want to know it has value right there. I know it has value to the school district.
It also has, I mean, it's a data point. It's
a data point that we use, but I'm gonna let you know that that has not been my experience and other people's experience. And I'm also gonna say this as a high school teacher. If you don't receive remediation for deficiencies in reading and math in 5th, 6th, or 7th grade, by the time you get to 8th grade, it is a snowball effect. You are so turned off from school, and we are taking that cohort of student and bringing them to the 9th grade. So, and to your point of how long it takes, let's say I was exited Margaret in 5th grade. I now moved to a whole new building in 6th grade. I don't get any MTSS services in 6th grade because I don't qualify.
You have to be recommended to.
Yeah, you have to be recommended, but I have all new teachers, I don't qualify, then I pick them up halfway through the end of 7th grade. When I'm failing everything, and then 8th grade happens, and you know what I have by 8th grade? I have a kid that doesn't want to go to school and hates it, and wants no part of it, and it's happening here. And we also have to look at the number of people in this district who have tutors, not for SAT, to tutor a high level kid. I'm talking about they have tutors for remediation. And I think that you need to look at that. You need to see how many people, not for, I want my kid to do better on the SAT. I need a tutor so they can get through the material at school. I mean, because if we just polled this table, I guarantee you a couple of hands would go up.
So I mentioned in my weekly update that is a data point that we could look at. It also takes into consideration parental choice.
It does,
there's a lot of subjectivity to that. I think what.
And financial ability.
And that comes to an equity issue.
So I think one thing that you mentioned that I would like to hone in on is part of our job as educational leaders and as teachers is to make sure that that first instruction, tier 1 instruction, which is probably the most difficult for teachers to make that shift to since AIS really took hold in the classrooms. That there is supports that the classroom teacher needs to provide at tier 1. And that's really where I think most teachers struggle. And that's where districts have to provide the most support for their teachers. Is what different strategies can you use within your classroom instruction if the general lesson that you have provided is not meeting the needs of all your students. And that's a difficult task, and that should be an ongoing task for all school districts to meet the needs of 25 learners that are in front of you that may have different learning styles, that may have different preferences, that may have different, just a bad day.
But with all due respect, Mike, if you have 25 kids or 28 in the class and 22 of them are deficient, you're running around like a teacher is a human being too. You wonder why they are burnt out.
And that's why I say it's support for teachers, right? It's not, we can say, well, we expect our teachers, but we have to support them. That's continued professional learning It's listening to them. And then it's also providing those additional tiers and the resources within those tiers. I think this district, if you take a look at the way we approach tier 3, the number of AIS teachers is something that's very good for our students. We have a lot of those supports once we get to that tier 3. It's our goal. The goal of MTSS and AIS is to have students removed from the program and hopefully not have to go into the program because of the supports they're getting in the classroom.
I just have another comment. If you're gonna explain things a little bit further on the website or somewhere, like I feel like something like this information, it is like helpful though, because sometimes, we don't know all the cutoffs. We may wonder why someone's not in AIS or, but just being like where everyone does test in, I think it might be there.
Yeah, our goal would be to make that parent friendly, right?
Yeah.
The educators, when they sit down, I know a lot of our educators have the F&P chart on the back of their IDs so they can see where our students are. We want to make it parent friendly. And also because even those cut scores that are on there, we as educators take a look at how the state does the cut scores, which basically tells us what we use as a measurement. The logarithm, I think, would confuse some of our APBC stats teachers or count teachers. So we even have to have it interpreted for us. So our job will make it be that we are letting parents be as informed and self-sufficient in reading that as possible.
Yeah, and then, so, and this is a question that Stephanie brought up, I'm just gonna ask the question. I know that kids that are just failing in middle school and high school does not mean that they are not able. Okay?
Yes.
That we make an assumption that they're not able. Most of them are able. Maybe they're not handing their work in, maybe they're not participating in class, maybe they're not coming to school. There's a lot of different factors there.
Yeah.
At what point, and if you're saying they meet every day at the high school, which is fantastic, at what point do you see the teachers get involved with, this child is not handing in their work, they're not doing well on tests, like AIS may not be the right solution.
Oh, really, Erica, I'm not kidding when I say this to you. I just had this exact conversation. I visited DV today to meet with my interventionist. And we were discussing broadly what we're seeing. So you probably remember a few years ago, we landed on executive functioning because of this. We see more and more of the kid who can, but won't. We don't know what to do with that. And I just said this to one of the reading teachers today. The kid who can, but chooses not to, does not come to you. You are the reading teacher. There's a different skill set for that, and we have to figure out what that is.
Because I think there's things like pulling bringing the parents in.
Yeah.
Getting them on board. That's not an AIS,
Yeah.
that's getting a parent on board and figuring.
I think, and I always say this, change can be an iceberg or a flow. They both affect the environment that they touch in different ways. Oftentimes in education, we are an iceberg. We affect change, but it takes a while, right? Which is difficult as people who want to provide everything for children that they need to be successful. I think we are starting to see at least, I don't want to say regulatory agencies, but those agencies that provide structures as a school district to operate in, such as the state education department. They are starting to realize that there is a difference between grading, assessment, feedback, and communication, and that all students may not be successful in learning in one pathway. So we are seeing opportunities in the state of New York for multiple pathways for success. We're having the profiles of a graduate, which is giving, we assume it's going to give our schools more flexibility in allowing students to be successful in demonstrating their understanding of the attainment of expected outcomes in different ways.
Yes, that's supposed to be nice.
And at the same time, it's an opportunity for us to, as educators in these conversations, which are very difficult, especially for educators who want to have our students live up to high expectations. There has been, I know it's turned into high school, conversations about what we grade. So if we talk about, should you take out points for late assignments? That's that's a multifaceted conversation to have. Because then you're getting to the root of, well, what are you truly doing as an outcome? And I hope the teachers listening aren't gonna skew this, but I'm just saying, I know that we have reasons why we take outcomes, right? We have expectations that work as an, but it's a good conversation to say, in this particular assignment, is there a need for it to be time? And do I assess that, or do I rate that? Or do I simply provide feedback? So these are all things that we have to engage in to see if we're providing our students for success. But it oftentimes takes a little bit of time to get there, but that doesn't mean we don't stop.
Just along the same similar vein of the way we put on tests at the high school level, or even at our elevated at the 8th grade level, where it's 20% of their final grade, that's a snapshot of one day. I don't know, I know that there's discussions around that to similar vein of what you're speaking of. Is there anything that can be done now to educate the parent on these changes? And then, so the students, because I don't think they're aware that they don't have to take 4 science regional tests, right? Or 4, they think they have to take all these tests. And then that 20% measure at the end of the year when they're from that one snapshot of one day. Is there anything we can do this year to accelerate that so that it's more fair for our students?
What I can definitely do is we can follow up with our guidance, our director of guidance, and talk about what types of conversation we can help with students about their pathways. You can definitely update our website with the new pathways and requirements that there are some optional regions. So that's one place we can take. I think, yes, there are certain things. What I would like to see, to your point, you know, one test that is 20% of your grade. We also, and this is me getting on a soapbox, and I don't waste people's time, but we also have to work to have an alignment with where our goal is to begin with the end in mind, to have a successful graduate of Denver Hudson High School. What are we preparing them for? And is what we're preparing them for in line with some of our practices? And I'm thinking just particularly for those going on to higher ed. I went into the military. I did actually have to worry about tests, and there was one test, and if you failed it, you dropped out of that career field and you were placed where you were needed. But I'm sure some of us who went to college had that one course where you had one test, and that was it. It was the day everybody showed up, right? And so there is that balance of, well, if we know we have a certain percentage of our students going to higher education, we also have to prepare them for that learning environment too, which has not changed. So that's an interesting dynamic that we in education always have to battle, right? If we want to go to standards-based grading at the secondary level, because we're reporting on progress towards identified learner outcomes, how is a university going to read that in their enrollment decisions? So these are all opportunities for us to continue to grow. I'm just trying to keep it.
Yeah, it's also, you know, it's hard because we know, we talk to people in other areas of the districts that they've already made some of these changes and we are behind the 8 ball on them. Not on the pathways to graduation, but the Regents exams and our testing and our percentages. So yes, and I have a kid in college, he will tell you that his final is 50% of his grade, right? I mean, we know this, it's real. So that's very true, but we're in Westchester County and we have to compete with other schools around us. And if they've already made these changes, we should be looking to do this for our students. And I mean, this is my soapbox. We have juniors and seniors here that they were the ones in COVID for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, the juniors. We made a lot of changes behind them. So we know that the kids behind the juniors and seniors are gonna get all these benefits. And they're like in the peak of this. We haven't really been able to give them, the 9th graders have their course now. We added typing, we made a lot of changes and it hasn't really benefited those kids. And I think they struggle a great deal. So I know we're making great strides in it, but we just can't forget that cohort, right? Like, I don't know, and that's my soapbox. I'm glad we're moving in the right direction and we're doing everything we can for kids. We are establishing an MTSS process. We're gonna bring back a more detailed parent-friendly version of what AIS looks like. I think these are all great things, but you know, we have to worry about the kids in front of us, so we can't just do it for next year, right? That's mine.
I just wanted to add that I think COVID may have impacted the maturity level of a lot of children. So I know we talked about it in curriculum last year, an executive functioning class that talks about note taking, how to study for a test, time management skills. I mean, they don't have it and they're not getting it. So when we talk about, Margaret, you're right, it's not just AIS. There's kids that have no clue how to study. They don't know how to take notes. And it's not that they don't want to do it. They just really don't know how to manage it.
This isn't just a hand problem, this is like a universal.
Yeah, it would be nice to have a course at the middle school level that addressed it. So by the time they got to high school,
We do a little bit, they have the.
There is an subsidiary
Yeah,
executive functioning
That
in sixth grade.
Yeah, that was also behind this junior. Sort of, yeah.
so my
And
daughter
then I
is an eighth now,
think, I
she
think
took.
we rolled it into, and have what?
They did in part, yeah,
I
behind
know.
the junior class.
Yeah.
So these are all things that we will ask our building leaders, I know they have, bring to their site-based teams. And this is also part of the decision process that we have to make when we look at changing schedules. Because we know the time is a limited resource, and if we are adding one course that may be beneficial and more relevant, we have to make choices. I know that Dr. Rower is leading a collaborative effort as a branch off of the Curriculum Council in coordination with other collaborative groups such as our site-based teams. She's working with our teachers and administrators at the elementary level to take a look at our special offerings and how that aligns not only with other districts out there, but what might work best for Andrew Cookson students. We are looking at our specials in the middle school to take a look at that schedule, like our universal arts, to see how we offer that and if we're in line with other districts and if it's something that works for Andrew Hudson, or can we increase perhaps different electives or increase instructional time. And also the second area, we're taking a look at our elective. So these are all task forces, and they may bring things that bring change to Hendrick Hudson. And sometimes that change is hard. I think we went down that road last year through the budget process and offered changes, and we listened to all perspectives. I think we've spent a good deal of time even last spring talking about some of those things. So those will come out, and we will remind individuals that we're doing this for the purpose of trying to provide the best instructional program and the most relevant instructional program. Just because it's been done for 10, 15 years, it may not mean it's still relevant.
All right, great discussion, thank you. Thank you. Let's get from us to our superintendent update.
Yeah, brief update. I thought it was brief. Just want to take a moment. Yesterday, November 19th, was a very important day. It was the day that we took to recognize school-related professionals. That is a moment dedicated to honoring the essential contributions of our support staff members. From the moment students step on the bus to the care and attention they receive in the classrooms, hallways, cafeterias, and offices, our school-related professionals are at the heart of creating a safe, nurturing, and effective learning environment. These incredible individuals include our paraprofessionals, clerical staff, custodians, food service workers, transportation staff, security services, skilled trades, teachers, teaching assistants, teacher aides, technical service such as our IT staff and our transportation staff. They all play a vital role in ensuring that every student has supports they need to thrive. Their dedication often goes unnoticed, so we wanted to make sure, because their impact is felt every single day, that there is a moment of recognition for them. And while it doesn't do justice to any of the work that they do, it is nice to just recognize them. On behalf of the Hendrick Hudson Central School District, I want to express my deepest gratitude for all of our school-related personnel, staff do to make our schools exceptional places for learning and growth. Thank you for your hard work, your commitment, and the care you bring to our district. So please join me in taking a moment to thank our school-related professionals.
thank you.
Just an update on the capital project. Last week, the district took an important step. Jill, if I'm stepping on your toes, just let me know. Our district took a major step in the continued work of preparing and moving our capital project forward, the first phase. Interim Assistant Superintendent for Business, Jill Figrella, and Director of Facilities, Anthony Merlini, and I interviewed 3 firms that responded to our request for proposals for our construction manager role associated with this project. This role is a vital role that provides logistical support, acts as a district liaison with any of the anticipated subcontractors once they respond to individual bids themselves to complete the work. So the construction manager will, the firm has a number of roles from planning and support to pre-bond work along with our architect to conducting regular meetings, keeping the district appraised of timeliness, to also receiving feedback from the district on what we're seeing. And they act as an intermediary to help us make sure the project is on time, under budget, and anything that does come up is communicated or addressed in a way that doesn't take our staff away from the work they need to do because it is such an additional project. So we are currently checking the references of those three firms, and we will be making our recommendation to the Board of Education shortly once we read those references. Anything I missed, Jill?
No, the sooner the better. We make a decision, hopefully at the next board meeting, you know, because this is important because they help us every step of the way through the planning and the logistics and, you know, in each of the buildings when the construction's going on. And so if we don't get them started early in the process, they, you know, it just will delay everything, and it will delay the escalation and cost and all of that. So I think it's really important that we do this for the next meeting if possible.
This week, our district sent representatives to a joint tabletop exercise with entities training for any event related to the Enbridge pipeline that runs through our community. So I know we've sent our security consultant, Amanda Dolce Moscovano, to that training. It included representatives from the town of Buchanan, first responders from across the region. And this event is in addition to the training we provided to our staff at the beginning of the year at Buchanan Verplank Elementary about any incidents that may occur with the pipeline. And related news, and it may be timely because I think we're supposed to get rain for the first time in a long time. So we are entering that time period where inclement weather could be part of our daily lexicon again. I wanted to remind the board and the community about the decision-making process that goes into keeping our schools open or closing them when need be. I think I shared this story, so I'm going to bore you again because I repeat my stories. If they're relevant. I think growing up, I shared that my father was the principal of my rival school. And due to the size of that school, he was also closely related to making decisions. I think he acted as, at one point in time, the acting superintendent, the athletic director, the social studies teacher, and the principal. So I remember sitting at the breakfast table, hoping in the early morning snow of the Adirondack Mountains, which never close for some reason, even if there's 5 feet of snow on the ground, they still I would hope my principal would close the school. And after watching my father make the call to open or not, and even being that close to the decision, I had no idea what went into it. And so I was recently asked what goes into a school weather related closing. And my answer was more than you could possibly fathom. So every situation is different. In most cases, this is the situation we will follow. The known system nears itself. Superintendents of the Putnam Northern Westchester Consortium, which includes Henry Hudson. We will coordinate with our local OCs to determine if we want a group phone call at 0:30 in the morning. It normally takes place about 4:30. Prior to that event, I will have a lovely conversation. Jill, I don't know if I told you how early this was when you were thinking about coming to board, but we will have a call before that with Jill, the Director of Facilities, and our soon-to-be transportation supervisor when we go through the civil service process. The purpose of that OC's call is to gain a better understanding of the impact that the storm may have on a region, because we often have students who travel to out-of-district programs, OC's programs, and we also know that our teachers may not necessarily live in our district, and they may be coming from a district that is closed that could impact our ability. So this is crucial for those reasons. Prior to that, as I said, I'll have a conversation with Jill and Anthony. Anthony is often driving the roads himself to take a look at the actual road conditions, particularly the areas in our town that we know may be problems for our buses. We also, in the past, have coordinated with the transportation departments of our town, village, and county. After the regional call, I will have a debrief with our transportation and facilities department again, which have been busy checking road conditions and also our property to see if we're safe to open as well. Based on the road conditions and all the previous actions, I will make a final decision to close or delay no later than 6:15 unless an emergency situation arises. And we will communicate that decision to close or delay to Parents Square, which parents, as I remind you, You can tailor to your communication preferences if you don't want to have my annoying voice wake you up. If you'd rather receive a text or email, you can have that as well. We also then coordinate with various media outlets, our district website, and our district social media channels to share that information. I will put in my weekly update, a bridge version of this, with also Vanita and her team have put together a great website on how to tailor your parent square. I will put that in the weekly update, so that's available. Other considerations that are there. The timing of the weather event is crucial, as morning or afternoon commutes may be more challenging than midday. This times may play a role. We also consider the broader impact of closing on the community, including parents' abilities to work if they don't have childcare, the potential strain on emergency services if we open and there would be an incident, the impact of the partners such as our UPK providers, Mother Connection, and the role our school food services play for families and students who may rely on food to provide them with their sustenance. And we also do consider lost instruction time that weighs heavily. I prefer to communicate early to give families enough time to make arrangements for the family-specific decisions. And a snow day may be called in advance if we know the weather conditions are predicted to worsen overnight or during the school day to give more time for families. Ultimately, the goal, my objective, is to prioritize the safety of everyone involved in the school community. And that does require a careful balance between the potential risks associated with severe weather conditions and the importance of maintaining our education community. And since I'm not a meteorologist by trade, they get to be wrong. I think it's about 70% of the time. I will try not to be wrong that much. So that's a mouthful, but I just wanted to provide everybody with that. There are no questions requiring follow-up from previous board meetings. I will tell my children to go to bed, please. And we're going to have a bridge cabinet reports because our process is if our cabinet who gives a presentation, we don't require them to have an update as well. So we will ask Dr. Garcia and then Vanita to provide their updates. It's tough with all school closing.
And by the way, the weather next Friday looks interesting, but we'll all be off, well, most people will be off. Thanksgiving, next Friday. Anyway, so thank you. Hope everyone's having a wonderful evening. Just briefly, I had the privilege of joining the new faculty meeting that was held at Blue Mountain Middle School this afternoon. And that's a gathering where all the first year teachers and one second year teacher in between like for a year and a half right now. Joined together with Christina Field, who's the mentor coordinator, and she leads this session discussing all good things about the new teachers' experiences in the district, you know, concerns, questions, problems, but also professional learning. And what I found unique about this experience is that she bridged between technical and adaptive issues. Technical in terms of like classroom observations, their experiences so far with that, the probationary teacher portfolio experience, new board policies like fraternization, and I made sure they understood what that meant. And also social media use, their personal social media use, and the concept that nothing online is truly private. So we spoke about that. But then also adaptive, which really I think is important to talk about because Christina did a wonderful job focusing on children. And that was the most important piece that I kind of came out of it. The concept of how and what we say or do and relate with children is paramount in our work with children in schools. And that was a theme that was really hammered home by her. She shared a video of a parent discussing his experiences with his autistic child and that child and how he went through school and kind of was anonymous and how friends that he made brought him sort of a new social aspect and appreciation for school and connectedness, which was important, having a trusted adult and the role of teachers and how they played in that. So it was really a nice, I think, case study for them to watch. But then the discussion afterwards about their role connecting with children and about their priorities as teachers. And, you know, usually teachers have a specific field that they study. I was a history teacher, so it's my child, right? And some people are ENL teachers, some people are English teachers, some people are PE teachers, art teachers, music, so forth. But at the end of the day, I emphasize that it's all about being a teacher first and your content area second, right? Understanding that your job is to relate with children and making sure that they feel safe and secure before they even start learning. And that is their role as a teacher first, and then it can be. or math teacher and so forth. So it was a really good discussion and it was a great opportunity for them to learn from one another. So I'm looking forward to joining that group again.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. Ms. Joy.
Good evening. So I'll start with, AIS for MTSS. We did load all of the iReady and F&P, assessments on Infinite Canvas assessment area. We also loaded the parent letters, which, Margaret sent out the email about. Couple of projects that we started this week is, we started working on Envision, migration over to the Lyric. We had talked about possibly moving, we're right now, on-prem with the Envision servers, but we started the kickoff call last Friday. Jill was there and my team was there along with the Lyric team. We're expecting that move to happen by February 15th, tentatively. The other conversation we started is last year, when I did the budget presentation, we talked about starting to move to managed IT through BOCES. And so we had a very long kickoff call today with all the managed IT people about what is the next step. So we are meeting on December 2nd. They'll be here, starting their assessment. They'll be walking through all of our classes, see what we got. What do they need to support us with? So more to come on that. We were really excited. I had a team of high school and middle school along with our architect from KSQ, went to Nanuet High School and Middle School, because we thought when we talk about one project and what we want to see, sometimes it's easy for me to say because I've been in other school districts, right? Like that's one of the things technology directors get to do. We get to visit other districts, which is awesome. But sometimes our staff has not been to other places. So high school had a team and middle school had a team. We went over to Nanuet High School and Middle School where they had a bond project done. It was very exciting to be in the space. So a lot of conversations happening, especially at the middle school, around what they saw, what they want to do. I actually reached out to KSQ to do a follow-up with our middle school staff in December so we can talk more about like what we want to do at the middle school. We also had 2 meetings with Furnace Woods and BB, the learning commons that they want to redesign the library space. Furnace Woods, this is our second or third design meeting. Furnace Woods looks pretty good. I think it's coming along really nice, and BB is not exactly what we wanted the space to look like. So they're going back on the drawing board and incorporating some of the things that we talked about, and we'll be meeting with them. Cindy and I would be meeting, and this time we would try to include more teachers in that conversation. Furnace Woods definitely had quite a few teachers in the last meeting, so I'll get Cindy to have more teachers input in that meeting as well. We had a technology leadership meeting on Monday, sorry. Monday. Yes, Erica was there, Cory was there, so a lot of topics as I expected. Of course, printers would have been the top conversation in that meeting, but I did talk about a lot of things that we had changed and what to expect and some of the considerations coming up for the budget. Unfortunately, the day that we met was the day that we had an incident with the internet. It didn't go down, but we had to do a patch update on our network access control system on last Wednesday, and we started to see issues instead of rolling back to the previous version, because we had already done quite a bit of work in the new version. Friday afternoon, we saw a blip in the system. Everything was working fine after that blip for about like 15 seconds. Then Monday morning came in and was, I think Carmen was the first one to tell me that other than Mike can log in, but that was a password issue. Carmen was the one who told me like, you know, I'm not getting on the calendar. Then when we looked into it, it was the slow response time. So teachers were complaining about the slow response time. So around 12:40, things were back online. So I just wanted to let you know that because the leadership at the Calendar leadership meeting also talked about that. And the final thing I wanted to talk about was the Parent Square. So we continue to implement more things through Parent Square. We just completed, high school usually send out an attendance letters home. They are mailed home, first class mail. So we now integrate that through Parent Square. So every Tuesday, the attendance letters are uploaded through Parent Square and notified to the community. The letter is actually a PDF that gets uploaded, so they get to actually see the letter, not just the email. So we don't have to send out those letters manually anymore. That's all I have for you.
Thank you, Benita, and I will just add that that's the reason why I get in so early to deal with the password issue. Just some feedback, I didn't want to leave out an individual who also served an advisory role on our construction manager interviews. Armand from KSQ was there to provide some context, but also he acted as the facilitator of the meeting, particularly because of his knowledge of the environment there. So it was you're getting your money's worth from America, is what I was saying. And Ms. Shipman is not able to join us this evening, but she did want to say that to clarify for the furnace of the FGL FTE that was mentioned on the slide that was crossed out. It was slated for Furnace Woods, but one of our teachers moved to the K-2 band for a class, and we had to fill that transfer at FGL school. Was there, so the position that was vacated. So that's what Lisa has shared there, and hope everything's going well in the show.
That was due to an additional class, the additional class.
The need, yes. That concludes the cabinet report. And what's that? Okay. And that, so Jill and Margaret, thank you for your presentations as well.
All right, we get to move on to policy.
So, cabinet members, thank you for your time this evening. I will stick around and make sure the policies are handled by myself. So enjoy your review.
Thank you.
As per the board presidents.
Thank you, and I just want to say happy birthday.
That's what I was getting to that.
I love it.
We have that on the agenda.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So
I was saying.
Thanks. Okay, so now we move on to policy. And we start with the second reading of policy 2342, agenda preparation and dissemination. Superintendent, along with the board leadership, will prepare the agenda for each board meeting according to the motion to waive the reading of policy 2342. Second, all in favor?
thanks.
You're welcome. So again, this policy just goes through like routine things that are already happening, that superintendent creates the agenda with the board leadership. It will be posted 5 days for the board, 24 hours if it's a special meeting. And the agenda for the public will be posted 24 hours before the meeting. But that's the policy, but practice has been with more things.
We didn't change it. Nothing was changed.
I have a motion to, thank you, I was looking for that word. Motion to approve policy 2342.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
I thought you were asking.
I'll second.
I'll second, that's it.
You're at a second reading of policy 2350, board meeting procedures. Each Board of Education should
Motion
be.
to waive the reading.
Second.
All in favor?
So this again, formality just goes through the order that we put our agenda together. And at any time we can make a motion to move an item if need be for there, but this is what we did last week, and I believe you added something, Lauren, to here.
Oh, yeah, the policy meeting.
Yeah, so that was put in as needed. So that adjustment was what was changed from there. Motion to accept policy motion to approve policy 2350.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, next is policy 2351, quorum. Majority of the members of the Board of Education.
Motion to waive the reading.
Second.
All in favor?
So just to clarify again, this one is just stating that what quorum is, defining it for us as a board, and it's that 4 of us together or more for quorum. Motion to approve policy 2351.
Second.
All in favor? Second reading, policy 5131, homeless children. The Board of Education, right?
Motion to waive the reading.
Second.
All in favor?
So this one we went through last week or 2 weeks ago as well, that just talks about defining, and this is all required. This is not anything that we created. This is coming from NISBA as is, just defining what a homeless child is, and what we would do for that child, what services we would be able to provide, such as remaining in the school if they choose to for the year, transportation, and etc.
Any questions? Okay,
Motion to approve policy 5131.
Second.
all in favor? Second reading, policy 5130R, homeless children regulations. Each school in the district will maintain forms provided by the Commissioner of Education for designating a homeless child's district attendant.
Motion to waive the reading.
Second.
All in favor?
This is just the regulation that goes along with the policy that we just looked at.
And this is new. It's new, but required. Motion.
I was just giving them time to look at it. Motion to accept policy 5131R.
Second.
All in favor? Second reading, policy 2250, board committees. Board of
Motion to
Education,
waive the reading.
Second.
all in favor?
This talks about the committees, and I think one part that we would want to mention is the part that's there in red, that our committees that we have consist of members of the board, superintendent, staff members, and that piece that we have there, and community members as determined by the board from time to time. So currently, we do have one committee that has a community member and it required, yeah, and I think one of the things that we will have to discuss is, are there other committees that we would want? And that we can determine.
And what's
As need be.
and what the process would be to bring people on, like, when the audit committee is a required role. And we had, last year, I believe, can't remember, we actually had a process in which we collected resumes and went through it as an audit committee and had discussions around who had most experience, and who's available, who fit into the time, and so it was there was a procedure that was used. That was the first time that was used, otherwise they would, I'll do it, and we just accepted the person. This one we added, so we can get more, see where who else is interested in it. So we wanted, I think we have to discuss what that would look like.
Yeah. So we will determine what the process would be.
Yeah.
Should we look at how other districts do it if they have a community member on? Or is it really just
when we
up to-
met, like, board leadership at that dinner, there were some that talked about the process. But I think that now that we have the policy that states we can do it, that's a conversation that we can have. That's a presentation we can have, or new business we can determine from there. But yeah, I think definitely we should look at how we select them, what their role is within there.
And which committees?
And which committees
should be added to?
Yeah, because for example, like, I think we talked about this, like safety might not be a committee that you want to put a community member on, because
Right.
there's things there's confidential
Right.
pieces that are discussed, but are there community members? I think there might actually be community members on that.
In their role.
As a
As an
district
official
employee.
Or,
Fire.
Yeah.
first
First responder, but we might want to have someone like on facilities or something we could.
For finance,
Or finance, yeah, like those don't have confidential pieces, same way.
I mean, they would sign an NDA before they or not.
They would have to sign an NDA. There are a lot of time, they have to sign.
Especially for finance.
So we'll figure that out and let people know.
Yeah.
Cool.
Motion to approve policy 2250.
All in favor? Okay, now we're moving on to our first readings. This is first reading of policy 2360 minutes. Board of Education was
Second.
on favor. So this one is basically talking about how we set minutes, and what's required.
We talked about what we're doing now, so right now, the requirement is creating all the minutes and typing them. It does say here that minutes can be transcribed from the video, but we are gonna stick with our tried and true. It's working right now, so we are gonna keep our minutes in written form because Carmen likes to do it.
It's gonna change when we go to diligent though, we might have to do that when we go to diligent, so.
Yeah, I know you like the video, but
Because technically our unabridged version of the video counts as minutes.
We do have to have, well, I think we do legally have to have minutes. I guess we would stream the video as a placeholder, but you have to keep your minutes permanently.
Yeah,
Wait,
so that's why we just,
if we did a video, it'd have to be either some way, yeah.
Yeah, if the last sentence is unabridged video or audio recording from unabridged written transcript can be used as minutes and made available to the public as such. So it has to be, it couldn't be our YouTube channel. It has to be put forward as our.
Carmen, you don't think it would be easier to just take the transcript?
Carmen likes.
Oh, the transcript, no, I had, no.
Let's keep the human involved.
Carmen likes this.
Carmen's a good human.
Okay, so we'll bring this one back up. This is the first reading of policy 2520, board member training. State mandated training, members of the Board of Education elected or appointed for a term beginning on or after July 1st.
Motion to waive the reading of policy 2520.
Second.
All in favor?
So this is every time we have new elected board members, there's 2 courses that they have to take, and it says that they have to take within the year of the voted in. The other piece we talked about is that there's other courses that we can take throughout. And then we're encouraging that whoever is the board president, board vice president, takes one of the courses that are offered for that role, for leadership, yeah. And then that we will provide a handbook and other things for members when they are onboarded.
This replaces policy 2130 currently.
All right, so next time we'll retire that one and approve this. Okay, bring that one back. This is the first reading of policy 2700, board staff communications. The success of any. Second, all in favor?
This talks about the way for board and staff to communicate, so for that, it's if it's anything to do with school related items, the staff would go through the superintendent. And then any communication that's happening between staff and board members, otherwise, like if it's about their child or anything else, goes through the personal email of the board member with the work email of the staff member, and then if it's just to be cordial, then it would be personal.
Yes, that's, so if it's school related, if it's about one of our kids,
We would email us personal address.
yes.
On their work.
Their work address, yes. But if they can't email us as a board from they're not supposed to from their work address. They can email us as community members, but it has to be from their personal account. Does that make sense? If they're a community member.
And vice versa, like we should be using our personal, if it's about it.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
I'm just gonna have to bring it back again.
So.
Okay, we'll bring that one back. Now we're doing the first reading of policy 3000, goals and objectives for administration. The Board of Education recognizes.
Second.
All in favor? So this is revised text, just revised text from our original policy. This is the recommendation of NISBA. I don't believe we changed any of the words in here. Do you have any questions? Okay, we'll bring this one back. First reading, policy 3100, superintendent of schools. The Board of Education shall by. Second, all in favor? This is about superintendent's employment contract. And
Doesn't go into all the other details, but I remember that was that.
right, that's another.
That's like 37 things you have to do, the list.
Yeah, this is a list. This is basics.
Yeah, this is the basic.
It explains the role of the superintendent. It also puts you, it says you have to attend all of our meetings of the board and participate in all of our deliberations.
Glad.
Okay.
All of our birthday celebrations.
Well, that's part of it.
Yes. Anyone have any questions? Okay, we move on to the first reading of policy 1120, school district records. It is the policy of the Board of Education.
Second.
All in favor?
This part, the part that was new is the FOIL request, correct, Carmen? And this was like if a FOIL request comes in on behalf of like a disciplinary action, we have to let the employee know that that's coming in. And that comes from a law or mandate now.
Yes.
There was a new legislation passed that determines the amounts to sign. It required an update that was previously not possible.
When it says section policy of the October 2024 first installment, do we need that? At the very top of the draft.
I'm not, well. I'm gonna change it when it gets put into the actual policy manual.
Right, because it's
a
a
draft.
fund we just did, as you can see here, we just approved it in late June. But again, then this new piece came in, so even though this is one of the series we completed, something new came in, so on top of, doing all of our new ones, we're still refining.
Right, because we still are subscribed to that policy update when that $900 one.
And we get that quarterly.
Yes, and we get different policies that get updated, so we have to look at those policies, even though we might have already
Yeah.
updated them previously.
So that's it for policy. We'll bring those three back. Now we're moving on to board comments and new business. Anyone wanna, anything to add? I did wanna to say that, yesterday was Mike's birthday. So happy birthday to our superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a great 21st birthday.
I also just want to add something about your presentation. One of the things that you were missing about your report, one of the people that you need to contact when you're thinking about weather-related items is Joe Ray.
Well, he should just be the person to call us and be the special, like, you know, correspondent for Amelia.
In another district, there's a guy named Ben Nolan. I guess he's from the Hudson Valley, but he's famous on Twitter and
Oh, yeah.
Instagram for, he lives in New Zealand, but from the Hudson Valley. He does like a prediction of
Yeah.
closures.
He doesn't care, but predicts.
Yeah.
He just like tomorrow. That's how we know.
We should write that in the policy.
Must be called Joe Ray. So I just want to just give I guess I have no new business. This is a committee report. Okay, so we move on to our committee report. Do you have a committee report? The only thing is, we had our Lauren and I attended the CIA committee, which is the curriculum construction committee, which is staff and Dr. Roller led the meeting. And I just, the reason I'm bringing this up is because I think it's important for the public to realize that this is actually everything being discussed in that group is actually on our website under, just to be clear, I think it's under curriculum. So if you go to our curriculum and instruction page, the curriculum instruction assessment committee and the minutes from that meeting are there. So if you're interested, you can work along and see along with the work of that committee and what they're doing. I think it's really great that that is public and, available to our communities. It's also good for the other staff to see, because I'm sure, more would be on the committee if they could, if they have the time, if they will.
That's another one that has parents.
As parents as well. That's it for my committee reports.
Say no.
Yeah, and Blue and White Madness is on Tuesday, the 26th at the high school at 6:15.
What's that?
That's the basketball things.
It's like,
And then like
that for college basketball kicks off our winter sports season. And last year it was a great way to get excitement about some of the winter sports, recognize our athletes, our scholar athletes.
And some of the elementary students walk out the athletes. So it's the town of Portland cheer teams, the basketball, little kids. There's usually essay. You have to write something like, what does henhood mean to you, or why? Yes, why you're in the fifth graders. There's a essay contest on Tuesday. The cheerleaders participate. The varsity and JV cheerleaders participate. Unified basketball is part of it, and then the varsity and JV basketball team for girls and boys, I think, are all in attendance. So it's a great event. It's on Tuesday at 6:15 at high school.
Just another great example of how the athletic department attempts to build community, literally throughout the community, but also with our young sports teams and our youngsters to keep them excited about positive habits and behaviors and choices they can make by joining the scholar athlete team.
That was it for me. Okay, motion to close the meeting. Second, all in favor? Megan?